Before we get into this episode, just a heads up that it features some adult themes like violence. Growing up, Karan Stark watched a lot of PBS. It was the 90s, and so shows like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Sesame Street, and Lamb Chop's Play Along were all in his rotation. But there was only one show that would get him out of his seat.
Barney was the only one that when it came on, I had to be up and engaged with it. The creators who made that show, they wanted you to not just watch the show, but be involved with it, the movement and the dancing and singing.
Whenever Barney and Friends came on, Karan wouldn't just watch it. He'd live it. Nothing else mattered during those 30 minutes. Karan also had all the VHS tapes and would pop one into the VCR after school. Or he would pull out his cassette player and just listen to the music, reenacting what he saw on the show.
Barney was the only character that I can remember who flat out, without a problem, said, "I love you." Right? That was the ending song every single time. Any character that you really believe in, to know that they love you and like that character telling you that, I think might have been what I drew to the most.
You didn't have to assume or guess that Barney loved you. He always told you, every single time, and often in song. Today, Karan's trying to instill that same message in a whole new generation of kids.
Cause I got a lot of loving, more than enough to give. It feels so good, like it should, it all comes back around.
A few years ago, Karan officially launched his own kids show, Mr. K's Clubhouse, on YouTube. Karan's local community television station, KPAO in Omaha, Nebraska, eventually picked it up. So did the streaming network DBTV.
Mr. K is a human character who has this communal setting of a clubhouse. It's a very colorful place, very bright colors and fun, and he invites friends in, both viewers through the screen and viewers in real life, to come into his clubhouse to learn about everything about the world around them.
Mr. K and the kids sing and dance and tell stories. Sometimes puppet friends join in on the fun. In the colorful clubhouse, there's just one rule.
Rule number one, everyone is welcome.
That rule, that everyone is welcome, is right out of the Barney playbook. Barney
was the biggest teacher for me. A lot of things that I learned, when I think back, it was because of Barney.
Barney's dino prints are all over Mr. K's clubhouse. Karan even closes every episode with a heartfelt song. It's his homage to I Love You.
There is no such thing as being too small. You can do great things when you give it your all someday.
Karan wants Simply Amazing to be I Love You for a whole new generation of kids.
A lot of us who grow up, sometimes we don't have the best childhoods or the best homes, and we're not told that someone loves us. We're not told that just because you make a mistake, you still have worth.
For Karan, Barney was his safe space. The messages he heard on the show, especially in songs, really stuck with him. And still do. From Connecticut Public, I'm Sabrina Herrera. This is Generation Barney, a podcast about the media we loved as kids and how it shapes us. Let's be real, Barney and Friends was all about the music. Each episode was packed with songs, from the opening theme to the final round of I Love You. Barney and the kids on the show would learn about everything, from how to share to geography, mostly through singing. The people behind Barney's music had to make sure toddlers could easily understand what they were hearing. That meant songs had to be active, repetitive, and simple. But those same ingredients, they made some parents cringe. For a lot of them, the songs felt like torture. And in some rare cases, it kind of was. Episode 6, Kid Bopz. Long before he created his own show, Karan Stark pretended he was on another one, Barney and Friends. When he was 14, Karan got his very own Barney costume. It wasn't exactly a replica, but it got the job done. He'd perform in it at birthday parties, malls, daycare centers. He would turn on some Barney music and embody the character, doing jumps, singing songs, dancing with the kids. It was as close as he could get to being Barney on TV.
Seeing kids see a character that they 100% believe in and love, and you can see them light up and interact with you, and nothing else matters in the world except for that this is my childhood friend, and they're here with me.
Karan also snuck a little Barney in his day-to-day life in high school. Nobody knew he was a Barney fan, but there were definitely signs.
Things would happen throughout the day that would remind me of a Barney song, and I would just sing it. And people at that time thought that I was just making up random songs for every single thing that happened.
Including Spanish class.
To say hello to my friends, I say hola. To call out to my friends, I say amigo. If I'm talking about a girl, she's a niña. And the boys we know are all called Chico. And so I would just randomly sing songs like that.
The fact that Karan still remembers all the words to these songs, it's almost as if that was by design.
We did things that mattered to kids.
Bob Singleton was a music director behind Barney for more than 10 years.
We kept the rhythms up. We knew that kids at this age didn't identify with a certain stylistic approach musically, but they were strongly attracted to things that motivated them, that got them moving. So that was our driving force.
Bob got his start with Barney in 1989, before the show blew up on PBS. And the people behind Barney really wanted to serve toddlers first and foremost, not the parents or grandparents.
Barney was different. Barney said, no, we're going to do it for the kids, and we think the kids will demand it.
In super simple terms,
the target market was a kid in a car seat.
Sometimes literally. Bob remembers one story in particular that was shared around the Barney set.
There was a mom who got in the car, put her kid in the car seat, and took off, and very soon heard her child singing the song Buckle Up Your Seat Belt, which is Skip to My Lou, My Darling, but it's when I go out, da-da-da-da-da, and they're going, buckle up my seat belt, is like the payoff of the song.
Bob says the mom heard her kid singing the song from the back seat and realized she hadn't buckled the kid's seatbelt.
Then after she got back in the car and had the kid secured, she was in a fender bender and the kid was safe. That was the kind of thing that we heard that helped us to know we were hitting the mark.
And they really tried to hit the mark. Each 30-minute episode of Barney and Friends had wall-to-wall music. Bob says there were about 8 songs in each one. The musicians thought a lot about language and the kind of words that would and wouldn't work with really young kids.
We had to be careful about not being frightening, not using words that were over their head, making the language inclusive so that it was something that the kids would actually say and wasn't talking down to them. So we had to do that with lyrics in the music and with dialogue on the stage.
The word choices, the syntax, the grammar, all of that had to be simple. That was something Angelo Natali thought about a lot. He was a songwriter for Barney and Friends in the 90s. For each song, Angelo followed a similar process. The show would send him an episode script. It included a cover sheet that described the kind of songs they were looking for, like a song about shapes or numbers or colors. Angelo would then flip to the scene in the script where that song would appear, and he just started writing. He'd start with lyrics, then melody. Sometimes a song would come to him almost immediately, like with My Jeans Are Always Blue.
My Jeans Are Always Blue almost wrote itself because I had such a strong concept of what this song was saying. I have all these different color clothes. But, in the end, my jeans are always blue, So, like, you just go through the laundry list of, my shirt is red, my socks are too, my hat is purple, but my jeans are always blue, And then, like, a little closing refrain that ended each verse. The clothes in my closet are colorful, it's true. I love to mix and match them, but my jeans are always blue. So that could have been like one sitting.
I see what you did there, making a song about blue jeans in the blues style. Angelo realized that might be lost on a toddler, but it made the process fun for him, and hopefully for parents listening too. The song's goal was pretty straightforward, to teach kids about colors. And what kid didn't have a pair of blue jeans in the 90s, right? Angelo didn't just focus on what the kids would hear in his music. He also thought a lot about what they might feel.
I know I'm onto something. If I'm writing something, I go, oh my Lord, this really touches me, Or if I feel sassy about it. Yeah, and if I'm laughing, there are mechanical things about making music, but when you're at that level of that's the seed, you're writing the song. It all starts with the song.
But there was more behind the music on Barney than some of the catchy bops we remember today. As music director, Bob Singleton didn't just create songs Barney would sing with the kids. He also had to do background scoring and what he calls musical highlighters, like a little twinkle here and there. When he first joined Barney, Bob wasn't sure how long the show would last, so he tried to avoid using sounds that felt too emblematic of a specific decade, like synths in the 80s. He and his team put together a collection of sounds that they could return to again and again.
I wanted to create a palette of sounds that kind of transcended decades, that might be able to hang on for a long time. My palette of sounds was very organic banjo, rhythm instruments, not electronic drums, orchestral instruments, fun sounds that were identifiable as actual acoustical settings.
When the show first started, the music's main goal was to keep kids physically active. Bob says the show even held focus groups where they'd watch kids to see which songs got them up and moving. If they had taped my younger sister Cindy and I growing up, they would have gotten a whole production. We weren't just watching Barney. We felt like we were a part of the show. So we were learning that choreography and belting along to songs like And the Green Grass Grows All Around.
People access music with their mind, their soul, and their body. And the way that we activated kids was we would get their bodies activated by having multiple layers of rhythm. If you hear a rock band, you've got the drummer going boom, chicka, boom, doing that kind of a thing. Well, we would have drums, and then we'd have percussion on top of that would be subdividing the beat, and then we'd have other instruments that would subdivide the beat on top of that, and then we would have multiple instruments that are playing bass lines, harmony lines, or melody lines that are subdividing the beat also. So that's that thing that, as long as it's coming to them in an organized fashion, that kids respond to that.
The music was created to get kids moving and dancing, but Bob and Co. wanted kids to feel safe, too.
We wouldn't do things that grown-ups do to introduce tension into the music. We wouldn't use those chord structures or clashing notes, or we wouldn't use tremolo strings, or things that you might hear in Psycho or something like that. We made it very, very friendly, very predictable, because predictable is safe.
Over time, the Barney team used songs to engage kids' minds, too. Nearly all of them modeled desirable behaviors, including Barney's most famous song.
I Love You really was kind of an encapsulation of how the show modeled caring. It wasn't just, I won't punch you, I won't steal your lunch. It was, I love you.
Back in 1982, a woman named Lee Bernstein actually wrote the lyrics of I Love You. It was to the tune of one of her favorite songs from childhood, This Old Man. Years later, one of the Barney creators found Lee's song, and it soon became a staple of the Barney in the Backyard Gang home video series. On PBS, Barney and Friends closed out basically every episode with a round of I Love You. It was something kids could rely on, a constant refrain. I mean, I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. The more I heard those words, the more I felt them. And so did a lot of other people who grew up with Barney, like Karan Stark, who you met earlier.
We as humans, we make mistakes. That's part of how we grow and how we learn. And sometimes it can feel like when you make a mistake, the people that you love the most or the people who are so close to you, they write you off in a sense, and you don't feel as accepted anymore. With a character like Barney, to know that they still love you, nothing changes in between that. Yes, we make mistakes and we move on from them and we learn from them, but that no matter what happens, I feel about you the same way that I felt about you from the very beginning.
Even parents like my mom, Liliana Herrera, connected with the song.
I Love You, You Love Me is a classic. That is a classic. It says everything, yeah. And I remember every time you love me, you coming home, and we had to hold hands. Because remember that they hold hands, so we had to hold. That was the thing, you had to hold hands. That's how you pass out the love.
The song I Love You made kids like Karan feel like he could make mistakes. And it made me feel like, no matter what, I was loved. Bob Singleton, Barney's music director, heard a lot of stories like that. And they really hit home just how powerful the show and its music could be. There was one in particular that really struck a chord.
The first time that the World Trade Centers were bombed was early in the 90s. And somebody set off a bomb in the parking garage underneath the World Trade Center, and it shut down all the power in the Trade Center. And there was a group of preschoolers that were in an elevator with their teacher, and it came to a halt, and it went dark. So what did they do? They sang, I Love You. Excuse me a minute. And that's the sort of thing that the TV can do, and when it's at its very best. And it was a way that we were able to connect with kids that made a difference.
I Love You really resonated with kids, not just because of its message, but its melody too. Remember, the song was another classic in disguise, This Old Man. This Old Man, like a lot of other melodies used on Barney and Friends, are all part of the public domain. The Barney theme song, the one we heard at the start of every episode, that's actually just Yankee Doodle. Public domain songs allowed the Barney team to make music at a pretty low cost, since anyone can use those melodies without paying for copyright. But there was another reason they used them.
You're getting something that can have multi-generational connections. So that grandmother or that dad or aunt or whoever has the kid on their knee and they're watching the show with them, they're familiar with that song too. And so there's an intergenerational bonding experience going on.
That was important to Bob, especially because his work was guided by a very simple belief.
Every parent and every little child is musical. It doesn't matter where you are in the world.
That idea that every child is musical, the Barney team took that to heart. They didn't just think carefully about the tunes and the lyrics. They also made sure the songs were accessible for kids vocally.
Adults tend to pitch music for kids too low because they think what's comfortable for them. That's a problem with a lot of preschool teachers. They're not comfortable singing that much, so they sing in a low pitch.
Wendy Sims teaches music education at the University of Missouri in Columbia.
But children's voices just can't sing that low, so the kids kind of growl around near the bottom. But the Barney songs were sung in really wonderful keys for kids to be able to sing with.
Wendy was a big fan of Barney in the 90s and appreciated how the show engaged her own daughter.
I was exposed to Barney as the mom of a toddler, and I was a single mom and sometimes just needed that television to watch my kid for me.
Wendy loves Barney's biggest hit, I Love You, but there's another song she likes too.
The cleanup song is one of the best contributions that they made. Clean up, everybody everywhere. Clean up, everybody do your share.
There was a lot of repetition in songs like Clean Up. For kids that young, repetition is a crucial learning tool, and it works really well in music. Verses, choruses, instrumental motifs, all of those elements are easily repeated.
If you've ever had a child in a car, they want to listen to the same thing over and over again. Play that again, play that again. And that's very comforting for kids. And it makes them feel very secure when it's predictable.
As adults, predictability might not feel super exciting. But for kids, predictability is safety. A song can be a security blanket for your ears, one that stays with us even as adults. Angelo Natali, the Barney songwriter, learned this firsthand a few years ago. That's when he was completing his bachelor's degree as a 66-year-old student at Western Connecticut State University. Of course, he signed up for a music class. On the very first day, the professor asked Angelo and his young classmates to share something about themselves, like a fun fact.
And then when it got to me, I said, I wrote music for Barney the Big Purple Dinosaur. I don't know why I have to use that adjective afterward, but just to make sure they knew who I was talking about. But these kids are sophomores, and the whole place they all gasped. It's kind of fun, so I don't care if it's cold. It's cold. It's cold, burr. I wish I had fur. I wish I was a bear with furry hair. It's cold.
My jaw would have dropped too if I were in that classroom. The music on Barney and Friends brought so much joy to the kids who grew up with it. But on rare occasions, the music was also used in ways the show couldn't anticipate. That's after the break. Hi, I'm Sabrina Herrera. Generation Barney is sponsored by Masterclass. For a gift that lasts a lifetime, you can't do better than Masterclass. You can learn subjects like how to create documentary films with Ken Burns, or how to build a fashion brand with Diane von Furstenberg. With Masterclass, your loved ones can learn from the best to become their best. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/dino for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/DINO. Masterclass.com/dino. Back in the 90s, there was a lot of Barney hate. And Barney and Friends music director Bob Singleton was right in the crosshairs.
There were talk shows and stuff where they mentioned Barney, like when I was nominated for a Grammy, local talk radio station said, "Hey, this is great. Tell us how it is," And someone would call in and go, "Man, I wish I could get my hands around the neck of that guy. I would really like to take him out."
Bob got threats for his work on Barney and Friends, not just on radio shows, but in his private life too.
My email address was out there, and I was getting people sending me emails threatening me and my family with horrible, horrible death and dismemberment and terrible things. It was frightening.
Bob and his family had to unlist their phone number, and they tried not to talk about his work on the show.
I remember going to a luncheon once, and it got said at the table that, I had been the music director on Barney, and this one guy, and I'm sure he was well-meaning, said, "Wow, my kids loved you, but I just wanted to kill you." And in that moment, I have to think, okay, is this somebody that I need to watch for in the parking lot? Or is that just his way of going, my kids liked it, I didn't. So it was awkward.
Thankfully, those threats never escalated into physical violence against Bob and his family. They were unsettling, but they never made Bob regret his work, writing music for preschoolers.
I didn't write music for a grown-up. I wrote it for a kid in a car seat, and it was the right thing for them. And I'm not ashamed of that. I think it worked out pretty well.
Kids in car seats were big fans, but some of the adults in their lives, that's a different story. A lot of parents found Barney's music annoying.
I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. And that's all I remember.
Robert Dalton was the father of 3 young kids in the early 90s, Bobby, Katie, and Meg.
Do you remember how, I responded to the show, or Bobby?
You guys had that glazed look over your face. It's just like you guys were like, "Whoa, wow, look at it. Barney the purple dinosaur. It's cool."
Meg is actually one of the producers on this podcast. Back then, she and her siblings were really into Barney. Their dad, not exactly.
I remember the first show, watching it with you guys when you were young. And it's like, oh, well, it's kind of cute, But as it progressed and you guys watched it more and more, it was like fingernails going down a chalkboard.
Barney was not music to Robert's ears. In fact, it was the music that really got on his nerves, especially I Love You.
I just did not like it because it was irritating. And the song was irritating. And everything about this purple dinosaur was irritating.
It wasn't necessarily the message of the song that Robert found annoying. It was hearing the song over and over and over again.
It was very sweet. It was nice, It was a nice meaning. But that song was played every time the show came on.
And he didn't just hear the song on the show. His kids would also sing it all the time.
If your mother was home, I would walk out of the room and let her watch it with you guys.
Again, Robert was far from the only parent in the 90s who didn't like Barney.
Barney the dinosaur is a lovable character seen on the American PBS network, but the character has some parents up in arms because of overbearing niceness and the almost cult-like hold that he has on kids.
Barney didn't just have a hold on the kids. He had a hold on the parents, whether they liked it or not, especially with those catchy tunes like I Love You.
It just got into your head. It just stayed there,
For a lot of parents, listening to Barney's music felt like torture. But something we weren't expecting to find out going into this podcast, that Barney's music was used in what some describe as actual torture. I know, this sounds so out there, especially since for many of us, music is such a positive force, something that's inherently good, right? But the flip side is also true. Music is used in negative ways more often than you think.
Musical torture has been described in humorous ways as something funny. And in a way, I understand that reaction because it's surprising. It's that left turn.
Lily Hirsch is a musicologist and writer. She's written a whole book about music being used in punishment, specifically as torture.
You think of music typically in this positive way, and then you hear about it as torture, and it seems surprising, it seems funny, especially when you're talking about a song for children. But It's amazingly effective as torture.
After 9/11, music was used in detention centers in Cuba, Iraq, and Afghanistan. This was the era of former President George W. Bush and the global war on terror.
Good afternoon. On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
U.S. interrogators would broadcast music to harass, discipline, and break detainees. Lily says a song or album would be played on repeat at very high volumes.
As a taunt, sleep deprivation, an earworm specifically, that disrupts thought. It disrupts your connection to yourself.
Songs used in detention would be played for hours, sometimes for as long as 14 hours straight. Let that sink in a bit. Music can be weaponized, and it has been for a long time. It's been documented by the Senate Intelligence Committee. They did a whole study on interrogation tactics used by the CIA. Some nicknamed that study the Torture Report.
It seems like after 9/11 there was some flexibility with the people in these different detention camps and what kind of specific music they were choosing. There was some almost creativity, evil creativity.
The Pentagon has said that the military used music as a, quote, disincentive, not torture. But human rights groups like Amnesty International disagreed. To them, it could amount to torture. We reached out to the Pentagon and CIA, by the way. They didn't get back to us. There was a lot of outcry when it became public that music was used in detention centers, including from some of the musicians behind the songs deployed there.
Tom Morello, the guitarist in Rage Against the Machine, was quoted at the time, "The fact that the music I helped create was used in crimes against humanity sickens me."
For a band like Rage Against the Machine, the use of any of their songs really was in conflict with their whole ethos. Their songs were all about calling out injustice, not perpetuating it. Not every musician was sickened by this revelation, though. Some were totally okay with it. US officials would use heavy metal songs, but even kids' songs like the Sesame Street theme and Barney's I Love You became like instruments of torture. Soldiers in 2003 told the magazine Newsweek that Barney made the interrogation playlist. These kinds of earworms for kids get stuck in the average person's head. The lines are repetitive, so are the musical notes. You want kids to easily remember them. But imagine hearing that song over and over, against your will.
I guess in the torture trade, it has been called futility music because it adds to the sense of futility. There's no use in resisting. And you've got this earworm in your mind, firing on repeat, and it feels never ending.
With a song like I Love You, there was also a clash between the tenderness of the lyrics and how it was being used. The refrain of I Love You became kind of a taunt.
When you have a song that's so associated in a positive way, to have it in a negative context like this, there is something very horrific and effective about that.
A song like I Love You was supposed to make kids feel safe, not bring people pain. We can create music with the best intentions in the world, but once it's out there, we have little control over how it's received and how it's used.
Music can be used in a lot of different ways. Anything you make, it's so subjective when it comes to music, and once it leaves your hand, it goes into the world. It's like this rolling snowball.
Once the music goes out, composers and originators of music, we have no control over what's going to happen after it goes out. We also have no control over the environment and the memories that are associated with that music once it goes out.
Bob Singleton, a music director of Barney and Friends, worked to create music that would uplift and affirm kids.
I love you.
You love me.
We're a happy family. With a great big hug
and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? I love that song.
People who love his music keep coming back to it again and again for a reason. And that's what Bob comes back to all these years later.
I think music at its best takes you somewhere, takes you to a place. And sometimes that place is warm and friendly and quiet and affirming. And sometimes it isn't. And I think the best music is the music that connects best with your entire being, your mind, your soul, and your body. And that connection takes you to a place. And it might be a place where you learn. It might be a place where you think. It might be a place where you feel. But it takes you to a place.
Hearing Barney's music today might make you think of a certain place. Maybe it's dancing in front of your TV, or singing in the car, or maybe even learning music at preschool.
Go ahead. How does it go?
Back in May, producer Meg Dalton spent some time in music class with her 4-year-old niece, Jane Dalton.
I like 4 down.
How does that go?
A 4 down.
Can you sing it for me, Janie?
What kind of music? I like that.
Jane loves the song from Frozen. Yes, the iconic show-stopping number, Let It Go. Jane's classmates are also big fans of music.
Do you guys like singing?
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you...
I like the Shake It Off song.
You like the Shake It Off song? Yeah. What do you guys like about singing?
We like how they have words. I like that it's how to read.
When I was their age, I also got this excited about the songs I loved. Whenever Selena's Amor Prohibido came on, I wouldn't just sing and dance. I would become her, as if a whole crew was in my kitchen filming a music video. There's something about music that just lights us up from the inside, especially kids.
Music is expressive.
Val Carubia teaches music at Jane's preschool in Guilford, Connecticut.
Children who often are hesitant to communicate in the classroom, in a setting where they're called upon, they're finding themselves more relaxed when they can just sing along with their friends. Music is happy and music is expressive.
A few times every month, she introduces the kids to basic principles of music and movement, sometimes using props and instruments. For them, music is a source of enjoyment, but it's about education too.
The thing about music is it's teaching other skills. It's also teaching letter recognition, counting, numbers, color recognition. So it's not just simply music. The kids are learning that they have an instrument within them. The instrument is their voice, and they can use it in many different ways.
Music shapes us in very concrete ways. It helps us develop our motor skills like walking and running. It helps us learn language and numbers. It even helps us regulate our emotions and can model how to engage with each other.
How to ask please and thank you.
My mom, Liliana, is a preschool teacher too, and she loves to sing and dance with her kids.
That's the magic word we're talking about, please and thank you. Barney again, see? And I sing those songs to my children today. So when I say, what's the magic word? And they're like, please and thank you. That's the magic.
She actually uses Barney songs to help kids learn curriculum and social skills. She finds joy in it and recognizes that they do too. So when it comes to teaching, she's always making up songs or adapting ones from Barney to make learning fun and exciting. That's what Wendy Sims does too. She's the music education professor you met earlier. When she teaches in preschool classrooms, she still uses songs like Clean Up, sometimes even I Love You, and other classics you might remember from your childhood.
So like we sang today an old song, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun, please shine down on me. They love that. And we sing Mrs. Sun and Baby Sun and Uncle Sun and Aunt Sun. And so we also make that into a lesson about family members. So I think that when I teach music or when we teach music to young kids, it's not separate from the rest of their schooling.
When you're that young, school is all about music. It's integrated into everything you learn.
If you think about the ABCs, who wants to sit and say A, B, C, D? I mean, you're not going to sit and say 26 things. But when you put it to music, it makes it fun. It makes it in memorable groupings. And people love listening. So, you want to sing to Grandma and Grandpa. No one says, talk the ABCs to your grandparents, kiddo. It's sing them, because singing makes it fun and interesting for kids.
So music really is a teacher, but it can also be a time machine. A song like I Love You can transport you right back to your family living room, watching Barney and Friends with a yellow blankie in one hand and a stuffed Barney in the other. It does for me. Music can unlock so much in us, emotions, memories, both good and bad. For most of us, there's something, even if it's not a song, that brings us right back to our childhoods. It could be a book series like Harry Potter, or even a scent like freshly baked cookies. The stuff we grew up with, it sticks with us. It lingers, it grounds us. It brings us back to a time where things felt easy, a time that we're nostalgic for as adults.
I would like a gentle, comforting authority figure to just tell me it's going to be okay and tell me how to behave in the world, right?
You always keep these little kernels, just like you have little pieces of your parents and your family members and your friends that you carry with you forever, that shaped who you became.
I was not a child, but I was a mom, but I feel like I'm Generation Barney.
That's next time on the final episode of Generation Barney. This episode was reported, written, and produced by Meg Dalton and Lily Tyson. It was edited by Cassandra Basler. Sound design and mixing by Jay Cowett. Jay also composed the podcast's theme. Additional music in this episode from 8 p.m. Megan Fitzgerald is our project manager. Additional editing help from Catherine Shen, Robin Doyon-Aiken, Chloe Wynn, and Patrick Scahill. If you want to learn more about the long history of music and punishment, check out Lily Hirsch's book, Music in American Crime Prevention and Punishment. A big thanks to Jane Dalton and her classmates at Community Nursery School for letting us join their music class. Marketing support provided by The Podglomerate. Program identity package provided by Media Vision Creative. Legal review by Lou Levy from the firm Lerman Center, PLLC. Lauren Komorowski is our Chief Digital Officer. Vanessa De La Torre is our Chief Content Officer. Generation Barney is produced with support from PRX and is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. Special thanks to PRX's Stephanie Quo, our muse and fairy podmother, and also Mike Russo, Grace Abler, and Tony Carlson. To learn more about the podcast, visit ctpublic.org/Barney. I'm Sabrina Herrera. Generation Barney is a production of Connecticut Public.
I can just see Barney just singing, "Oh, clean up, put your toys away."
So you didn't like the voice?
Yeah, I don't like the voice either.